I'm going to be talking to Dr. Xiaoxi of IDTechX about her recent study on solid state batteries. Now, this is the next generation technology. It's going to potentially transform electric vehicles. And the question is, when is it going to arrive? And what will the cost be? What will the energy density be? Who are the players? And some of these questions are answered in her study. So welcome to the interview.
Thank you very much, Markham. It's really my great pleasure to be here and happy to discuss about solid-state batteries because this is a really interesting technology, especially for the electric vehicle applications. We just mentioned about like when solid-state battery will come to the market. I think before we talk about this question, we need to clarify a concept. So like how we call solid-state battery, because most of the companies working in the market, so they may not necessarily working on all solid-state batteries. So there could be some liquid content or maybe some polymers like gel form contained in their recipe. So in that case, maybe strictly speaking, it's not like all solid-state batteries, but from like a marketing point of view, like some people may still call them solid-state battery. Like in my report, because those kind of technologies are also interesting to the public, I also include them in the report. So there are different opinions about when they will come true, but according to different company plans, so there is a time, so basically after 2025. So the exact time will vary depending on different company and their technology choices. So for instance, if they want to really just show some working vehicle prototypes with solid-state battery, or this should definitely deliver an absolute value. So that's the difference.
Right. Now let's talk about what some of the benefits are. So the energy density is always an issue because that, of course, is related to range. Cost is an issue because, of course, electric vehicles are declining in cost and will soon be competitive with the sticker price with internal combustion engine vehicles. Safety is a big issue with solid state compared to a liquid electrolyte between the anode and the cathode. So it sounds like the solid state battery is going to be the next big step change in battery technology. Have I got that right?
Yeah, in some aspect, definitely. So for instance, we can see lots of investment and also collaborations and different activities from automotive companies. So that's why they just attracted so much attention. Of course, safety is one of the biggest key drivers. Energy density is also another one, but there are also other advantages of the value propositions. For instance, they can go with high voltage cathode materials and even lithium metal, so which could be difficult with conventional liquid-based electrolyte, and because they are considered to be safer. So in terms of the battery management system, this design could be different. For instance, they may use a more compact design or reduce some of the components materials. In addition, they could be designed a more flexible way. So like, for instance, the connection in series in parallel can be different compared with the conventional one. So these are just some of the most important value propositions, but there are also others.
Now, I've interviewed a number of other battery scientists about the issue around solid state, and everybody has a different opinion. Some are very skeptical. They say that we won't see solid state batteries on the market until maybe late 2020s, maybe even as late as 2030s. But you think that it's going to be ready to take off after 2025. Why are you a little bit more optimistic than some of these other experts?
So, and as I mentioned before, it really depends on like how will you call about like in the market. So there are already some trials to be used in vehicles. There are also lots of prototypes launched also in their plan. And from the battery point of view, they are like shipping batteries to the vehicle companies and to do the tests and really actively to make it true. So basically lots of those activities and their stages of the typical commercialization process, I think that is a target achievable. And also, as we mentioned before, it's not necessarily all solid state battery. So maybe there are some liquid content or maybe gel polymer content, but still prove to be better and give better safety. Then, so from technology point of view, they are easier to come to the market earlier.
Now, you mentioned in your study that there are manufacturing challenges that need to be overcome, and the large companies are working on that. Can you give us just a quick sense of who the big players are and some of the issues that they're having to resolve around manufacturing?
Yes, of course. So basically, there are lots of like important startups. There are also a really important traditional battery makers. So I can give you some examples. For instance, Toyota, Prelogium, Ionic Materials, QuantumScape, Samsung, SES. So just to give a name, and there are definitely the list can be much longer. So we also asked a question about like challenges, right? So the challenges, there are basically three different technologies. For instance, the polymer-based electrolyte, the oxide-based electrolyte, and the sulfide-based electrolyte. Depending on different technology approaches, the challenges can be different. But generally to say, so for instance, if we talk about energy density, if we don't replace the electrode, but only the electrolyte, they may not give you a superior energy density compared with conventional liquid-based electrolyte. So that means, for instance, you need to go with lithium metal anode and even high voltage cathode, and then that can give you some advantages. And cost, of course, would be definitely a really difficult issue. At least in short-term period, they may be difficult to reach a really low cost. So if we come to a different technology approaches, for instance, polymer-based battery, of course, that depends on what kind of polymers you use, but usually they may need a higher temperature to operate. They have a relatively lower anti-oxidation voltage, so some kind of problems like that. In terms of oxide electrolyte, and so they may have a grain boundary issues, and also the interface could be less compatible. And usually they need a really high centering temperature for the manufacturing. For the sulfide electrolyte, for instance, they may have some toxic byproducts generated in the process, and some other additives used in the manufacturing process could have less choices. So I just gave some simple examples to give you an idea about the typical problems that can have.
Right, and let's wrap up the interview by talking about competition between the various regions and countries, because I think it's well understood now that we're shifting from a fossil fuel-based economy to an electricity-based economy. And of course, batteries will play a key role in that, primarily starting with electric cars, but there's all sorts of other applications. And so countries recognize that they have to have a battery industry. They have to be on the leading edge. They have to have access to minerals. Everybody's scrambling to make sure that they have capacity, new technology, supply chains, all of that, lots of regional competition. And who are I mean, China is acknowledged to be number one now. Who are some of what are some of the other regions that are racing to compete with China?
Yes, of course. So, so basically, we think of this question from technical point of view and also like supply chain point of view. So China definitely has some conventional battery makers and has a really huge market for electric vehicle. But apart from China, I think other East Asia countries like Japan, Korea, they also can form a cluster. So one reason would be based on their traditional advantages in the battery manufacturing. They have some history about that. and also a correlation of the electric vehicle. They are also closer to the East Asia market. I think other efforts we can see from other regions also include Europe and also North America. Sorry, I don't just name one or two countries, because sometimes there is tend to form a cluster. And for instance, both Europe and North America, they are also big market for especially like electric vehicle. So I would say the application market can give us lots of information regarding the future supply chain and establishment. And in the process, we want to have the battery manufacturing as close as possible to reduce like transportation and also supply chain security issues. So they tend to build an eco supply chain system. So then that can have the situation. So although we may have global collaborations between different countries, it's also quite likely to form like a regional clusters. So mainly in 3 different regions: East Asia, Europe, and also North America.
Thank you very much for this. Really appreciate your insights.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also, I enjoying discuss with you. Thank you so much.